You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast.
Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, the show business owners listen to when they want to take their business to the next level. Head to businessbrainfood.com.au to catch up on past episodes and access show notes from every episode. Now, here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, welcome back to the Business Brain Food Podcast. This, my friend, is the podcast that is 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, it doesn't matter whether you're just brand new to this business thing, so maybe you're just scratching that entrepreneurial itch, or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time, you got the scars and the wounds to prove it. No matter what, there's always something new we can do to take our business to the next level. And today is going to be absolutely no different. I can't wait to get Julian Leach on the podcast. We'll have him very, very shortly. I'll tell you more about him and his amazing business that he's building, ParcelPoint, very, very shortly. Before we do that, I want to remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by maxmyprofit.com.au. The team at Max My Profit help you build the business you imagined. So if you imagined having a business that was more fun, maybe more profitable, maybe it gave you more time to do the things that you loved, but instead you've got a business that's a bit yucky to run, it's stressful, there's never enough money at the end of the month for you to pay all the bills, and you just don't like running the business that you've got, maybe you need to talk to the team at maxmyprofit.com.au. They can help you with everything from sales, marketing, systemization, team recruitment, motivation, leadership, you name it, anything to do with your business, they can help you fix it and make it better and help you build the business that you imagine. Head to maxmyprofit.com.au and let them help you build the business you imagined. All right, so as I alluded to, I've got Julian Leach coming onto the show. Julian is the co-founder and CEO of ParcelPoint. Originally from the UK, where he worked as a management consultant, a job which then brought him to Australia. He then launched his innovative business, Parcel Champs, in 2011, and soon connected with Philip Lee, who launched ParcelPoint around the same time with a very similar concept. Now, ventures were the perfect match, and that's how they co-founded the company ParcelPoint. Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, Julian.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Hey, my absolute pleasure, buddy. My absolute pleasure. And we're really looking forward to learning a bit more about what you guys are up to. I actually just recently saw you on the My Business magazine, or My Business website. I don't think they do a magazine anymore. I'm not sure. And you guys have just raised $4.5 million.
That's right. It's a really exciting milestone for us, and it gives us an opportunity to do some really cool stuff in the next phase, which we're very much busy with our heads down on now, which is great.
Good stuff. So let's wind the clock right back, mate. I'm always interested to hear the background of people. I mean, my research here tells me you're a management consultant. Is that what you left school and went straight into, or did you do something else before you got into that?
Well, the answer is probably kind of. I actually was one of those guys who took a couple of years off and did some ski seasons and some backpacking around the world, and probably spent a bit longer doing all that stuff than is recommended, but had a lot of fun along the journey. And then I went into management consulting, probably a couple of years later than most people would join the grad program at Deloitte in London, and that was great. I did that for 7 years. I actually moved over here with that role, with Deloitte in that consulting practice, and it was fantastic. It gave me a lot of exposure to lots of different types of companies and lots of different types of business problems and opportunities, and was really, really foundational for me. I think it was a great run.
Yeah. Now, I think it's really interesting thing. So you were in Deloitte, you're working with them. What made you decide to start a parcel company? I mean, it's a very competitive industry.
Yeah, that's right. And look, it's funny, often these things come from a personal experience, and that was definitely the case in this situation. I was just a guy living my life in my neighbourhood at the time, which was North Bondi in Sydney, and I'd like everyone, had plenty of missed parcel deliveries and had to trek down to the post office to pick up those parcels that I'd missed. And like everyone, I found that experience quite frustrating. And there was a day that I just had a bit of a light bulb moment, I guess, in terms of thinking, look, is there a way that we could do this better than the default solution, which is that experience that no one likes? And it was interesting. I was already on a journey where I was thinking about starting a business. I wasn't quite sure what that was going to be, and I was exploring some ideas around the sharing economy and how local neighbourhoods could connect better to I'm sorry, that's my phone, which is terrible. There it goes, it's off now. I was exploring ideas around sharing economy and how local neighbourhoods could connect the people in those neighbourhoods better to do all sorts of things. And I had quite a lot of ideas that I was working on, and when I had this terrible experience in the post office, I got down there one day 5 days late, and the parcel had actually been sent back to the US. And this book then travelled across the Pacific 3 times before I received it. And several weeks later, I kind of had the book in my hands. And the original idea I had was, whilst I missed that delivery at home, someone else in my apartment block would have been there. In the old days, in a smaller community, they probably would have poked their head out the window and said to the postie, "Hey, happy to take this on. I know Julian really well. I'll give it to him when he gets home." As communities have developed and people have got busier, that sort of infrastructure doesn't naturally exist in many places now. So I thought, wouldn't it have been cool if the guy downstairs who works evenings is at home all day could have taken the parcel for me? And the original location I set up there for was actually my home. And the original idea that I had was called Parcel Champs. And the idea was that your neighborhood champion would be that person who would take your package for you while you're out and then give it to you when you get home. And it was really going to be a peer-to-peer or neighborhood kind of based service in the original idea. And in exactly the same month, a guy called Phil Lee on the other side of Sydney set up a ParcelPoint, as he called it, in Pyrmont, in an internet cafe when internet cafes were still a thing. We had one residential location in Sydney and in Bondi rather, and one internet cafe in Pyrmont, basically trying to do the same thing. And quite quickly, I realised that it was going to be a bit more easy, certainly in the first phase at least, to go into a B2B environment where you're using convenience stores, pharmacies, those kinds of locations as the pickup points, instead of neighbourhood locations or residential locations. And cut long story short, and it's quite a long story. A few months later, I met up with Phil, and we realised that we're both trying to do the same thing, and we joined forces at that time.
Wow. And I think, I hear a lot of stories where a business is born out of frustration, I mean, how silly is it that your book crossed the Pacific several times before you got it? It's just crazy, really.
It really is. And there's so many things out there that look like that. And if you've got a mind for trying to solve problems, it's amazing how many you spot. And it's funny, I was going through that phase. I'd kind of decided that I wanted to start something and really had no idea what that would be. And it was a really interesting period of my life, actually. I have to admit that because I've been so busy on this business for the last few years, I've not been approaching life with quite the same attitude that I was during that phase, where I was intent on spotting problems as I went about my daily business and making note of them. I was literally carrying a notebook around. I was writing down all these things that I observed and then sort of brainstorming whether they could be solved. And there, you encounter several an hour if you start thinking about it. It's amazing.
Isn't that interesting? And so, what is this your first business?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What a way to start, eh? What a shebang.
Yeah, great. 8 years in, and it's obviously there's all sorts of ups and downs along the journey, but it's very fortunate to be in this position on the first venture. That's certainly the case when you look at all the stats, and you need a combination of things, and there's lots of sensible business things that you need, but you need a bit of luck as well. And I think we've had a good run across a number of different areas, and yeah, it's great to be in this place.
So what ignited the spark in you to start a business? I mean, besides the problem, because you were obviously looking for an idea to start one. If you can think before that time where you said, you know what, I'm going to start thinking about starting my own business. What sort of made that happen? What was it that ignited that spark?
Yeah, it's funny. I went into consulting always with a view that I would do it for a period of time as a sort of foundational, way of developing some experience in business. And I'd actually done a philosophy degree, so over here people really laugh about that because they can't understand why you wouldn't do a commerce degree if you want to get into business. But in the UK, it's actually quite common to do a degree in the arts if you're interested in the arts, and then go into business later. So it's not uncommon, but nevertheless, you do have to find some sort of way, obviously, of getting into the workplace and developing the experience quite quickly and for what you want to do. So I thought consulting was a great foundational thing for me, but I never really intended to go kind of all the way, if you like, in consulting and just go for the sort of partnership track or whatever you could do if you just kept going. So about 5 or 6 years in, I was starting to think about what the next thing would look like, and I don't know where it came from really. I mean, my dad has always run his own businesses, and I guess I had that experience, which is interesting, and probably had an effect on me. And once I kind of was set on it, and I just started looking around, and with no real urgency, but I started just thinking about the kinds of things I might want to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So a few months in, you spot Phil. Phil's doing something similar. I mean, a lot of people be scratching their head going, well, normally what you would do is you'd really ramp up to compete with that person. Instead, you meet up and you join with that person. So tell me about why did that happen? What was so attractive about joining rather than just getting on with your own idea?
Well, look, I think, if I'm honest, the first time we met, it was probably a bit more of that. We met a couple of times along the journey, and at first you think, yeah, go for it. Nothing wrong with a bit of competition. But I think for both of us, the truth is that, in a market like this where, in the market within which we operate, which is the consumer delivery or consumer parcel delivery market, it's more than 80%, covered by Australia Post. And really the most important thing to focus on when you're thinking about the competitive landscape and the competitive environment is how you're going to compete with a player that's as big as that. So we had a really sensible conversation that was actually brokered by one of the guys who put together the initial round of investment into the company, into the ParcelPoint company at exactly the same time as I kind of joined forces with ParcelPoint. And we all collectively agreed that it was much more sensible to combine our collective efforts and do it together rather than have two absolutely miniature companies fighting it out amongst themselves for not much gain probably. So I think that was a really smart move. And I actually had some interesting advice from another guy as well who'd recently sold a business. And I won't say which business it was for now because I don't want to sort of betray the trust around the conversation. But he'd recently sold a business and he was aware that I was going through this conversation with Phil. And he gave me some advice and he said, look, we had an arch rival in the market who was another startup. And he said, we had another very large incumbent in the marketplace who was really the key competitor. And he said, we took a path where we went our separate ways early. And he said, if I could wind back the clock, I would change that decision. He said, I think we should have collaborated earlier and then we could have built something bigger, quicker. And that was really, really helpful for me to hear that kind of advice.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes you've got to get out of your own way. And, I'm a great believer that nothing great was ever achieved alone. And so if you can find somebody who's got a similar vision and you can align yourself with them, it's always going to get you there faster. And 50% of something bigger is much better than 100% of something that's small.
Of course, yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. And so tell me, for you guys, it sounds like you've gone down the capital raising sort of track fairly early in the stage and you've done it again. What was that always your plan, was to get investors involved to help you raise money to build this thing?
It was, yeah. And look, Phil had actually found some investors already around the time that we got together, which was great. So I must admit the capital raising process for phase one for me personally was quite a straightforward one because I came in when that was very much a process that was really well advanced. And look, the shareholder community that we've got, that we're working with on ParcelPoint is a fantastic bunch of people, a bunch of high net worth individuals, many of whom are sort of household names in the Australian market who've been very successful business people in their own previous careers and sometimes in their current careers. And some fantastic venture capital support as well. And I'm pleased to say the round that we just closed, just the other week, was entirely funded by shareholders who've been on the journey with us for more than 5 years. So we've had the same shareholders all the way through the journey, and a really terrific bunch of people to help drive the growth. It was you asked, was it always the plan? I think this business is a real scale business. To be interesting to the retailers, one of our big strategies is to be on all of the online retailers' websites, and we've done a really great job of that. We were on the ASOS website, the Amazon website, the eBay website, Iconic, Surfstitch, Showpo. The very big brands in the marketplace have mostly now got ParcelPoint available on their website. But those brands weren't interested when we were talking about 10 or 20 locations in a corner of Sydney. They all said, you're going to have to build something that's relevant to most of our customers before we put it on our website. So we realised early that we would have to kind of go for it and build it and they will come is not a very sensible business strategy. But I think we did quite a smart job of really testing that demand was there with the consumers, the online shoppers, and with the retailers. Before we went out and built it. But at some point we had to really go for it, and that meant we had to scale up quite quickly before we had the profits to fund that growth.
Yeah. So how many outlets have you got now?
So we've got more than 1,400 now.
Wow, well done.
Yeah, thank you. And they're all around Australia now. So It's not a fully national network because obviously the geography of Australia is a challenging thing to cover 100%. But when you look at the metropolitan areas and the bigger regional areas, we've got really great coverage, which means we've got more than 75% of Australians have got a ParcelPoint in their postcode.
Yeah, well done. And which means you're solving that problem, right? So what it means for a consumer now is they can order something online and have their shipment sent to a parcel point, and that way their parcel's not going to get sent back to the sender.
That's right. We hold it for 14 days. They can pick it up whenever they want, and really importantly, that pickup experience is a after hours or weekend experience if that's what they want. The locations are places like pharmacies, convenience stores, service stations that are open really great times. So it's convenient. It's there. If they're busy during the week, they can get it on the weekend. Just whatever works for them, basically.
Great stuff. So would have been raising $4.5 million is a brilliant achievement. Well done on that. And obviously that's. In fact, let me ask you this question: do you feel that the fact that you've got shareholders, investors, really contributes to your success? Not just because of the capital, because obviously the money is handy. But I've seen a lot of people spend money and lose it all. But more so the accountability. Do you feel that helps you and Phil stay on track and really drive the business?
It does, absolutely does. We are highly accountable, and that's a good thing for sure. But also, the shareholder community that we've got on board at ParcelPoint is a bunch of phenomenal people who've got lots of great experience as well. So it's really not just about the capital that goes into the company. It's about having the sounding board to test ideas on, and to discuss problems with, and all the stuff that you encounter along the journey. It's a lot easier to navigate if you've got a great network of people who are have all got skin in the game, of course.
Yeah, and so do you guys meet on a regular basis with the board or something like that with all the shareholders?
Yeah, we do. So we've got monthly board meetings, and Phil's no longer in the business operation, but he's still on the board. So we catch up very regularly through the board. And then we have also, pretty routine and regular catch-ups with shareholders, and they're a bit more ad hoc as required. But personally, I love catching up with all of the shareholders because they all add something a little bit different, and it's a great set of voices to have in the mix when we're working out where we go from here.
Yeah, I can only imagine how valuable that would be. I'm sure. Are there times when you hit a roadblock in the day and you go, "Geez, I'm going to talk to XYZ because I know they've got experience in this"? Are they on tap like that as mentors?
They are, and of course, there are one or two that we go to more than others. But absolutely, there are people that we can just call whenever we need something, and that's very, very helpful.
Yeah, how good's that, eh? How good's that? And besides that, what other achievements would you say have been your biggest achievements since kicking this thing off?
So we've had a few really exciting milestones in the last few months, actually. The websites I mentioned earlier has been terrific, and last year in particular, we got for deliveries, we got onto the eBay website and onto the new Amazon Australian website, both in 2019. So that was great for us. Only a few months ago, we were doing mostly returns. So as well as pick up from the parcel point, you can drop off your return at the parcel point, and we were predominantly a returns company until quite recently. And last year, as we got onto more websites for deliveries, we tipped that balance. So we now do more deliveries than returns. It's quite close actually. It's around 50-50 at the moment. So that was a terrific achievement to get onto those really big brand websites for not just returns but for the deliveries as well. We had a terrific milestone on Christmas Eve of all days. We hit the millionth customer in Australia that had used the service. So that's not the millionth parcel, but the actual millionth individual person.
Wow! And on New Year's, on Christmas Eve, how good's that?
Eve.
Nice little Christmas present.
Yeah, young sort of girl in Melbourne dropped off an Adidas box of shoes to return them at a pharmacy in Melbourne, and I actually went down there and met the pharmacist and the girl who was using the service, and we gave her a prize and stuff, which was great. So that was a fantastic milestone for us. And look, we're already up to almost 1.3. Probably, in fact, I haven't seen the data for a couple of days. We're probably over 1.3 million now. So the rate of new customers coming on board is really, really strong at the moment. And it meant that year on year, last year we'd more than doubled the number of people that had used the service. So that million milestone was really terrific. We actually had our Wi-Fi password for a while was race to 1 million and had to be updated, which was pretty exciting.
Now it's raced to 2 million. We'll give away the Wi-Fi password so they can come and download stuff on your internet. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, that's awesome. What I'd like to know, because the growth has been quite rapid. Has there been many growing pains or challenges that you've had to face on the way?
Oh, I think everyone has those, right? And I think if you're not having those, then I'd love to know what industry you're in. It's always tough. There's always ups and downs, and it's a real roller coaster. And we've had plenty of both. I think along the way, probably the couple of things that I'd say have probably been the hardest. First would be we started out actually with lots of different types of customers and not being quite clear on who the customer was, and in many respects there are lots of possible users of this service. The online retailers are customers of ours and get great benefit from offering the service on their website. The online shoppers, of course, are users and get benefit from the service as well. We also had the courier companies as customers, and then we were also working with the local stores as customers. And I think we went through a period where we weren't quite clear on how all those different groups were going to interact with our platform and the different ways that we would, commercially interact with them as well. And we probably basically, if I'm really sort of going to simplify, we're probably doing too many things at once. And we realised that, and said, look, we need to be more focused. And we kind of really simplified the business model about 2 years into the journey, and that made the next wave of growth a lot more efficient when things were a bit simpler. Funnily enough, we then encountered the same problem all over again through a really exciting opportunity, which was we ended up white labeling the software that we built. So the technology platform we built for ParcelPoint was considered by Woolworths, of all retailers, the biggest retailer in the country, to be something that they were interested in using, sort of white labeled. So they said, look, we think the software you've built we could use in-house at Woolworths, and we would get some value from that. So we set up this kind of separate business under the one roof, doing white label technology software solutions, and very quickly realised that we were back in a world where we were doing too many things, and it was quite hard to do those things without the focus that you need in a startup. So we demerged the company, and we now have 2 companies, not one. And I'm entirely kind of separate from that second business now. But the white label software is in another business now, and that business is also doing a terrific job, and it's just raised a lot of capital as well. So I think number one challenge that we've had, that I think we've probably solved quite well at various points along the journey, has been, in an environment where there's a lot of opportunity, and when you're working with people who love grabbing opportunities, it's very easy to become a bit defocused and start trying to do too many things in parallel. And we've been, I think, quite good at checking ourselves and getting the focus back. But I'm not going to pretend that we did it as quickly as we probably should have done sometimes. Sometimes you can be a bit too opportunity focused, and it's impossible to do too many things well.
That's a great learning. And I think, so many entrepreneurs listening to this podcast will relate to that. And some of them are probably going through it right now. I mean, how do you control that then? How do you have a system where if you get a good idea, I mean, you said before you used to walk around looking for problems. How do you control that urge to want to jump into everything? Do you write these ideas down and just park them? Do you just ignore them now? What do you do?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's an ongoing challenge, I'll be honest. Like, we've got we use a planning process called OKRs, which is, I think Intel invented OKRs, and Google really made it quite famous, and a lot of very successful companies, including a lot of the Silicon Valley startups, use OKRs as their framework. It stands for objectives and key results, and it keeps you quite honest about the things that you've planned to do, and then executing on those things and delivering the results that you'd intended to. And look, I'll be honest with you, I'm one of the worst offenders. As an entrepreneur, I think it's quite easy to get distracted by the new shiny ball that's over there. So you have to lean on your team as well. And, you document this stuff so that it's very clear what we said we were going to do and what we're doing. And if that changes, that's often okay. But it's only okay if you do it with some acknowledgement that we need to change tack because of some good reasons, because of either a problem we've encountered or a new opportunity we've seen. But let's do that consciously. Let's not just run around without that sort of discipline around sticking to what we said we were going to do. So I think, as you build out a great management team, a great leadership team that extends, of course, it's really important to scale anything that starts to extend beyond the founding team. You find you get quite complementary personality types, I think, in the room, which makes it easier for sure. Makes it a lot easier to stay.
Because I think it's a problem so many entrepreneurs have, isn't it, Julian? Like it's a squirrel, that movie. I can't remember what movie it is. Squirrel, you get distracted.
Yeah, exactly. I think though, on the flip side, and this is the challenge, is there's no easy middle ground. On the flip side, I think when you're in a startup environment, if you're too rigid about what you thought was going to work out and staying focused on that, then you can really miss some very large opportunities. Some of our biggest opportunities have come about in quite an unplanned and short-term manner. We'll get a call from a partner who says, hey, we think it'd be great if you could help us with this, and we think, oh, it wasn't really in our plan, and we're actually full for the next 6 months in terms of what we're planning to deliver already. But sometimes you just take the call, let's jump on it, and then you look back and you think that was the best decision ever. So you have to stay flexible.
Yeah, I think that's important. So how did you go about, you've partnered with some big names, and you said you sort of spoke to them early in the piece before you had enough outlets to interest them. How did you go about getting those relationships? Did you just ring them up and say, hey, I've got an idea, I want to bounce off you?
Yeah, it was funny, how open the door was in the early days. So when I had literally one location at home, I started reaching out to e-commerce companies and to courier businesses as well. And I'd got a bit of a background in business development, so I kind of knew how to, get into a larger organization and sort of navigate that. And it was amazing. I got into some very, very large businesses very, very early on. And at that stage, let's be honest, I was really testing a concept and a slide deck, if you like, and to be fair, I had a few customers coming around to use the service already, so it wasn't just an idea. I had real customers coming around, but the very small number of parcels transacted one location, but it meant that I could really test that kind of B2B demand very early. So it's a combination of building it out whilst doing the sort of the business development in parallel.
Yeah. And so do you rely on, do you have trucks or anything, or do you rely on other transport companies to bring them to your parcel points? Tell us how that, what's the infrastructure look like?
Yeah, so look, we're an asset-free business, so we don't have any trucks, we don't employ any drivers, and we partner for all of that infrastructure. So the depots, the trucks, the drivers is all through partnership, and we've got a very large number of great partners, and it means that we can stitch together a transport solution and a logistics model that really is quite unique and really does exactly what we need at the various stages in the chain, because we'll do everything from picking up parcels from retailers' warehouses in huge trucks in bulk, to running parcels through a consolidation centre where they get scanned and sorted, to delivering those through last mile, very small delivery vans, and sometimes even on push bikes in the city areas. So it's a very flexible model. We've got line haul services that run interstate on big sort of taut liner trucks as well. So it's and all of that's been pieced together with multiple logistics partners. For the first time ever, it's really exciting. In the last few weeks, we've been experimenting with running ParcelPoint dedicated vehicles, and that's been a very successful trial for us. And that means that now we have some vehicles that just do nothing but ParcelPoint work all day. Now we still subcontract that work, so we don't buy those vehicles or employ the drivers directly, but we work with partners who then put on the vehicles on a sort of dedicated basis. What that's doing for us, which is quite multifaceted in terms of the benefits, is it's giving us a faster delivery service. So for the first time ever, very, very soon in the next 4 or 5 weeks, we'll have a next day guaranteed service for our delivery product, which is really exciting development. In about 2 weeks, we'll have our first electric vehicle on the road. So we'll have a more sustainable solution at the last mile where we can deliver to the ParcelPoint location without any carbon emissions at all, which is something that we're really excited about taking to market. But also it means that we can brand up those trucks as well, and really, it gives us a great opportunity to get the ParcelPoint brand out there in the cities, and on the side of the vans that are driving around that the customers can see as well.
Yeah, cool. And that was, one of my next questions is going to be about technology. So it's good to hear that you're thinking about electric vehicles. But at any point, have you thought about what the future looks like? Because we hear Amazon talk about using drones for delivery. Have you what are your thoughts on the future of parcel delivery? What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, look, there's going to be all sorts of innovations coming. There's no doubt about that. I think on demand is clearly taking hold, and people have got very used now to the kind of experiences they're getting through the Uber apps, whether it's for taxis or for takeaway food. That kind of experience is clearly becoming more prevalent. we're really excited about what our role looks like in that on-demand space, which is something that we're very actively working on right now. But we've done the research, and that's not just with consumers, but with retailers as well. And absolutely, it's the case that people are becoming more sustainably minded. So we're very excited about this idea of being the most sustainable delivery solution in the marketplace. Not only is that about having electric vehicles or push bike deliveries at the last mile, but also because we deliver 5 or 10 parcels to a single ParcelPoint location. That's one stop, and then the customers will come often on foot to pick up those parcels. It's even if it's delivered through a diesel powered truck, it's inherently a much more sustainable model. It's less carbon emissions, but it's also less driving around in the neighborhood. That truck doesn't have to go up and down several streets and make lots of noise and clog up the roads, as well as the emissions benefits. So I think we're going to see now, not just in transport, but across all areas of the market, we're going to see people really looking for solutions and products that are more sustainable.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned Uber before. I have wondered when parcel delivery was going to become fluid. And what I mean by that is that you could be walking down the street, and because your mobile phone allows you to be tracked, your delivery vehicle will just turn up next to you and say, here's that thing you ordered yesterday or this morning. They'll just find you wherever you are and bring your parcel to you.
Yeah.
I guess it's going to happen instead of having to go somewhere. I mean, that's you've solved one problem, but you've now created another problem. We all have to go somewhere to pick our parcel up.
Yeah, look, it's funny. There are different reasons why people use pickup, and one of them is they just find it more convenient, and that's definitely one of the key reasons. We think the sustainability angles are really interesting and exciting one that we're exploring now. But the other reason is cost. And what we find is that if you want a direct delivery to a customer's home, in the future, if you want a direct delivery to a customer's hands, all of that stuff is really exciting and will definitely exist. And we think that there's a lot of innovation to come in delivery to the customer's hands. But those services are probably always going to be more expensive than the consolidated delivery. So if we can marry up the combination of, for some people, it's more convenient to pick it up, it's also the lowest cost solution, and it's more sustainable, then you've got a nice package of things which you can hit lots of different customer needs.
Yeah, and like you said, with 1,400 outlets, there's going to be somewhere nearby, isn't there? So what's your advice to somebody who's thinking like you were 10 years ago and going, I'm looking for an idea?
Great question. Look, I don't think it has to be based on personal experience, but I can only really talk about how I got into this, and I think it's a great way to get going. If you've had a personal experience in your own life which was frustrating, and you think that you can put together a solution on that experience, then that's a nice place to start, because it's something that you really understand and can kind of engage with. But once you've got that problem, if you like, or that idea, I think there are a couple of things that I was very focused on in the early days, because I'd been asking around and reading lots of great published information that kind of that made it clear to me what was going to be really important. And I think the first thing that I always always advise anyone who's looking at starting a business is to make sure that the problem is a really big problem. It's quite easy to find a problem that seems big at first. When you start scratching beneath the surface, you realize it's actually maybe not that big a problem, or it's actually a problem that's not quite painful enough for enough people to be worth going after. And then it's not necessary to be doing business in a growing market, but I often advise people as well that if you can be operating in a growing market, life's a lot easier. And the great thing about e-commerce is it's growing so fast that it's really a rising tide, and our opportunity to grow as quickly as we want to grow doesn't even need to result in anyone else in the market losing market share, because there's so much growth that people can be very successful just off the back of the additional market size that's being created year on year.
Yeah, so important. And what would you say are the top skills that you need to be successful at running your own company?
So there's lots of different ways of going about it, of course, but from my own experience, I think it's a tough job to raise capital with an idea only. So my experience, and certainly I know it was the same for Phil before we combined forces, was it can be really helpful to build out a serious proof of concept and a serious pilot with some real data before you go to market trying to raise capital. That gives you just a much better position in terms of the likelihood of success in raising the capital, but B, really importantly, the valuation that you can put on the initial company, so that when you raise that capital, it doesn't result in having to give too much of the business away. And to do that, I think it's really important that you're someone who can cover a lot of different bases, and you really know how to take something from idea to something that's got some really concrete proof points around it. And being quite resourceful, being quite flexible in the way that you go about things, and also being prepared to roll your sleeves up and run every single function at once is really helpful at that stage. Other people go about it a different way, but for me, it was actually really exciting and really rewarding to run that first few months as a thing that I kind of did by myself. Phil was doing exactly the same thing on the other side of town by himself just before we ended up joining together and raising capital. And I think that's the kind of time frame that I would recommend people look to raise capital after they've really proven it out by themselves.
Yeah, well done, mate. Well done. I take my hat off to you. It's good to see you guys hitting your strides and doing some great stuff. So congratulations.
Thank you.
How do people find out more if they want to learn more about what you're up to?
So you can go to our website, which is parcelpoint.com.au. But most people who use our service find out about us on an online retailer's website. So next time you're shopping on any of the big retailer websites, or indeed many of the smaller ones as well, have a look out for ParcelPoint there, and you'll find us on Amazon, ASOS, eBay, Iconic. Really large retailers now. Just have a look, and whether you're doing a delivery or arranging a delivery, that is, you're just ordering something, or whether you're trying to return something that you need to send back, you'll find it more often than not now on those websites.
So you can just select a local parcel point and take the headache out of having to make sure you're home.
That's right.
Love it. All right, mate. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing your journey with us. It's really exciting to see what you're up to, and I love the you guys that are really innovating and using technology as a tool to be able to grow an amazing business. So well done.
Thank you very much. It's been really great to be on the show. Thanks.
Hey, my pleasure, mate. All we've got left to do is the 60-second scramble. I'm going to start a clock ticking. I'm going to ask you some quick questions. You're going to give me some quick answers. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
I reckon if you can build a business from scratch, you can do the 60-second scramble without any issues. So here we go. Number one tip for being more efficient.
Oh, starting the day with a serious list of to-dos and making sure they're done at the end of the day.
Perfect. Have you got a hidden talent?
Oh, good question. Playing the guitar.
Nice. What's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Cockroach.
Your biggest addiction?
Coffee.
Who's your mentor? Have you got a mentor or somebody that you look up to?
So I'm actually going through the process of changing mentors at the moment, so I'll park that one for now. But I've got a lot of mentors in my life, and some of them are in our shareholder community, and some of them are actually friends and family members and all sorts. So it's quite a broad group, which is great.
Fantastic. Have you got an inspirational quote that you can share with the listeners?
Oh, good question. I don't have one off the top of my head, to be honest. No.
That's okay. Describe yourself in one word.
Tenacious.
Tenacious. I love it, which is really important to grow a successful business. Well, there's the buzzer. Thanks once again for joining us for the Business Brain Food podcast.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for joining and listening in to this podcast where we had Julian Leach on the show from parcelpoint.com.au. If you want any of the resources, anything that we mentioned throughout the shows, that you can go to the show notes, which is at businessbrainfood.com.au. This was episode 230. Or you can just put ParcelPoint or Julian Leach into the search box and this episode will pop up and all those links will be in the show note there for you to click on. We always love hearing from these entrepreneurs. It's an amazing story of success as he goes through and grows this business and over 1-something million customers now using ParcelPoint. So very much a great story to hear. Now, if you are interested in growing your business, this podcast is brought to you by MaximizeProfit.com.au, and the team at Max Profit help you build the business you imagine. If you're struggling to work out how to get your millionth customer, then maybe you need to head across to MaximizeProfit.com.au and find out how the team can help you build the business you imagine. All right, well, I've been Ben Futro. You've been absolutely fantastic for listening into the podcast. Until next week, have a very profitable day. See ya.